Zendejas.
Present.
Councilwoman Allen.
Present.
Councilwoman Price.
Present.
Councilman Supernaw.
I'm here.
Councilwoman Mungo.
Here.
Councilwoman Sorrow.
Present.
Councilmember Uranga. Councilman Austin.
Here.
Vice Mayor Richardson.
Here.
Mayor Garcia.
We have a quorum. All right, great. Let's hear the one item, please.
Recommendation to receive supporting documentation into the record, receive public comment pursuant to Proposition 218, direct city clerk to tabulate the written protests and report the results of the tabulation to the mayor and city council, and if a majority protest is not established, conclude the public hearing and adopt the resolution establishing the solid waste service rates under a two-step rate adjustment citywide.
Thank you. City Manager Tatum.
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor, members of the council. I'd like to introduce Deco Melkonian, our Deputy Director of Public Works, and he will make a presentation regarding this Prop 218 hearing.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Mayor and members of the council. I'd like to thank you all for this opportunity for this presentation this evening, and we'll go ahead and jump right in.
Stacy, just come here.
Okay.
Councilmember Supernaw, if you could mute yourself.
Where's the clicker? Okay, so just a little history on our rate increases. Going back to 2016, we did not have a rate increase for 3 years. Then our most recent rate increase was in 2019. It was also a two-step increase. March 1st was the first step. October 1st was the second step. And we have not had a rate increase in 3 years since then. So why do we need a rate increase? Well, we hired a consulting firm, Hilton Farkoff and Hobson, to study the cost of our service. And what they determined, not surprisingly, was our solid waste collection costs have increased significantly in the last 3 years. Our current rates do not generate sufficient revenue to cover cost of current service. And in addition, there are some new state-mandated diversion programs, which I've been here before to present about, Senate Bill 1383, organics diversion, and additional funding is needed for the implementation of those programs. If you look at the chart here, the current single-family rate, a standard 96-gallon cart, is $28.99 for a single-family residence. The actual cost of service is about $36. So this shows a history of the last 10 years, or 11 years of refuse fund annual operating deficit or surplus. You can see that in 9 of those 11 years, we have had a deficit, with the largest being in 2019, the year before our last rate increase. 2020, you see a slight operating surplus. That was after the rate increases went into effect. And then immediately thereafter, we start seeing operating deficits again. This year, that's an estimate on the last bar there, at nearly $3 million. Why do we have these increases? Just to highlight a few of the costs, major cost increases. Liability insurance has more than doubled since 2019. It's about a $1.5 million annual increase. Fleet costs have increased about 60%. That includes fuel costs, as you can imagine, costs for parts, and also additional costs for some additional trucks we have needed to acquire to begin organics collection in our commercial sector. I want to point out a major increase since COVID. Pre-COVID, we averaged about $140,000 a year in bad debt. This year, we're coming in at $1.6 million. So that's more than 10 times what we were dealing with 3 years ago. If you take the bad debt for the last 3 years during COVID, we lost out on $3.5 million of revenue to cover our costs. Disposal costs have also gone up significantly, and you can see that in fiscal year 20, we were at about $55 a ton, whereas in fiscal year 23, next fiscal year, we're looking at $61.50 a ton. To put this in perspective, we're going to talk about organics collection in a couple minutes and the impact that's going to have on rates, but disposal costs at Pointy Hills not landfill, but the Pointy Hills processing plant for organics are almost $118 a ton, so double what the trash rates are. What else drives our costs? Well, we saw a significant increase in bulky item collection requests. In the 2019 rate increase, we increased the number of bulky item opportunities for residents from 4 to 12 a year. And during COVID, our residents took advantage of that. They were at home. People were cleaning house, and you can see it went from 29,615 in the year before COVID to peak at 38,400 last year. And this year it's settling back down. We anticipate this fiscal year will end with just over 31,000 requests, still ahead of the pre-COVID numbers. So what happens if we don't do a rate increase? The blue line here indicates where we want to be on a regular basis. The green line indicates where we expect to be if we have this rate increase, and the red line indicates where we expect to be if we don't, which means shortly into next fiscal year, we would have no money left in the refuse and recycling fund. So people have asked, where do we fit with other rates around the state? So that's a very difficult question to really answer because everybody provides different types of service, right? But there are similarities. The first red bar you see is what our current rate is, $28.99 a month. The third red bar you see is where we will be after the second rate increase at $40.87. The last two bars, Oakland and San Jose, you can see actually have a higher, those cities are actually doing a complete SB 1383 rollout. They're at about $140 to $150 a month. Other cities in this comparison, for example, Pasadena, which is just about exactly the same as we will be, that's only trash collection. They currently don't have a rate in place for recycling or organics collection. And most of the cities reflected in this chart, other than the last two, most of them do not have an organics rate built in yet and are in the process of doing that. I know Torrance will be doing their Prop 218 hearing next year, and others are also preparing like us. So for this particular cost of service study, we have not yet prepared to implement residential organics collection, but we are prepared to implement commercial organics collection. So here you see our commercial rates. A 2-yard bin once a week will be $199, a 3-yard bin $255, and so on. You see comparison of the cities we looked at earlier. Some of those cities don't provide commercial collection service, but the ones who do, for the most part, will still be higher than ours. It's interesting to point out that the city of LA rates there don't include organics collection, whereas our proposed rates for our commercial accounts do. We anticipate that city of LA rates may as much as double when they implement their organics collection rates. So we're in a pretty good position compared to these cities. So what are the current services provided and what are we proposing to include in this rate increase? Currently, we provide service to about 118,000 accounts for solid waste and recycling collection. We offer 12 bulky item collections a year. We help support the household hazardous waste facility that is sited in the city of Signal Hill. Long Beach was the lead to work with the LA County Sanitation Districts, LA County Public Works, City of Signal Hill, and EDCO Disposal and Recycling to build that and facilitate the creation and implementation of that drop-off center. We provide electronic waste collection. We provide a myriad of waste diversion programs, including product bans, monthly composting classes, et cetera, and public education. It's important to note with Senate Bill 1383, public education is mandatory, and we have minimum requirements on an annual basis, so it cannot be ignored. What we're proposing in this new rate increase will be organics collection for our commercial accounts. That means your restaurants and your larger businesses. It also adds for the administrative, enforcement, and education staffing to ensure that we comply with the new state laws. And it also implements, among other things, a food recovery program. California landfills about 11 million tons of food waste on an annual basis. And we have about over 9 million people that have a shortage of food. Part of what SB 1383's goal is to get that food out of the landfills, out of the processing facilities, into the hands of the people that need them. So it is a requirement. Other requirements include strategies on procurement, ensuring that we are purchasing a certain amount of composting, a certain amount of recycled content products, and there are actual minimums that say you must purchase this many tons of compost and whatnot. Utilizing renewable fuel whenever possible. Education and outreach programs are mandatory, and I've discussed this at other hearings, but I want to reiterate what makes SB 1383 unique to California is that there's a mandatory process to citing people who contaminate their containers. So people who put recycling in trash, who put organics in recycling, we will be required in the next couple of years to begin a citation process. So all this administrative staff that we need to add is to begin building that team to do those things. I think I skipped a slide, excuse me. All right, so the proposed support for this particular program is all accounts, the charges that go, all accounts are being charged with an anticipated increase in our recycling program, the additional costs that we showed earlier, the actual cost of service for the collection, and an additional 8 positions to help support Senate Bill 1383 for all commercial and residential accounts. In addition, commercial accounts will receive, their new bill will include the cost for staffing and the operational requirements for the collection of commercial organics waste. That includes the addition of 8 refuse operators, a supervisor, and additional operating costs such as carts and vehicles and all that type of thing. The residential accounts do account for the acquisition of a portion of the needed carts for organics collection. What is not included in our cost of service study? What is not included in these new rates are the costs for single-family and multifamily collection. That will become a phased implementation after commercial collection is rolled out. The operational costs, well, I said the administrative costs are included, operational costs are not. The refuse operators to collect, the vehicles, a portion of the carts are included, but the disposal costs and all those things that come with the actual collection. We have a request for proposal prepared to help us develop these organic routes, collection routes, and also concurrently optimize our current solid waste routes as they will be impacted by having an extra cart out there. We are looking at what the cost of reloading and transporting organic materials to meet state diversion requirements. That is not included currently because we're trying to determine that cost. And we're going to be looking for property to house these vehicles, equipment, and staff because the current location at Temple and Willow is not large enough to house the increased number of folks. So just wanted to address some operational challenges that we have in rolling out this program, and one of the reasons why we haven't been able to do it yet, shortage of candidates. Our operators require commercial driver's licenses we're not just competing with other trash companies. We're competing with FedEx. We're competing with UPS. We're competing with the shuttle drivers at LAX. We're competing with long haulers that transport goods from one end of the country to the other. And we all have seen the supply chain issues that we're having around the country, again, in part because of a lack of commercial drivers. And those supply chain issues impact us differently, too, in the development and delivery of carts and refuse trucks. Some refuse truck companies are requiring 24 months notice before they can provide you a vehicle once you've ordered it. And we've also found that compensation is an issue. Commercial drivers being in such great need around the country, salaries for commercial drivers in all different industries are increasing rapidly, and that affects our ability to recruit. Finally, we have a lack of local infrastructure for the disposal and processing of organic materials. We are currently working with the Department of Energy Resources to develop an RFP to see what we can do to potentially transform surf or enhance surf to be able to do some organics processing as well. That said, we recommend that the City Council receive the supporting documentation into the record, receive public comment pursuant to Prop 218, direct the City Clerk to tabulate the written protest and report the results of the tabulation to the Mayor and City Council during this hearing on August 23rd, 2022, and if a majority protest is not established, conclude the public hearing and adopt a resolution establishing the solid waste service rates under a two-step rate adjustment. I'd like to thank you for your time. I'd like to thank our Environmental Services Bureau staff, Chris Kubert and Benjamin Blanchard, and also our consultant, Hilton Farnkopf and Hudson, for helping us develop this report for you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to public comment on the hearing. Is there any public comment here in person or online for the hearing?
If there are any members of the public that would like to speak on this item, please line up at the podium. In the Zoom, please use the raise hand feature or dial *9 now.
Come forward, please.
To get hit for everything.
If you could just start with your name, and then we'll get going.
You hear?
Yes, we can hear you.
You probably.
We can hear you, ma'am.
I'm sure everybody can without it, Mike. It's just so unfair. It's always the homeowners when everybody uses, they eat food, they recycle. I mean, I don't understand, where does it ever stop? We get hit every single time for everything. And not all of us have money. Believe me, I'm one that doesn't. I'm on a fixed income, and it's just not fair. You know, it's just, if you're going to do it as a special tax. Put it on the ballot. Or if you're going to do it income related, based on your income as to what the hikes would be, which mine, I'm sure I would be excluded completely. But it's just, I mean, it just seems so unfair that it's always us that get hit with it. And this is just a start. I mean, it's going to go in, what's the next one in January? And then who knows down the road, another couple more in 2023. You know, I'll be priced out of my house because of trash. And it's just, it's not right. That's all.
Thank you for your comments.
In Zoom, we have 2 speakers.
I'm sorry, we have one more in person.
Oh, sorry. 1 second.
My name is Zamir. And instead of coming here to go ahead and bitch and complain, I'm offering a solution. It was offered about 5 or 6 years ago, and the city council never even came to our demonstration. So instead of reiterating what I have to say, I wrote this, and if somebody takes it, you can go ahead and read it at your leisure. Presently, I hold 8 patents in mechanical, chemical, and biological. I have broken down a lot of different types of organic waste, including PCBs, which normally would take a year from 1,000 milligram per liter down to 100. We went from 2,300 to 500 within 1 month. So anyway, would anybody care to take the paper so you can review it? Nobody. Thank you very much. See you, Al.
Thank you. Online? We have anyone else? Just come on down. Now's the time. Is there anyone else speaking on the hearing?
If you want to speak, please line up at the podium. Thank you.
My name is Zoila Ochoa, and I work for the city for 24 years, and I'm retired now from the city, and so I have the time to walk and get to know my neighbors, and a lot of them did not know or did not read anything about the hearing, so they were not aware of this increase of the rate. So I got, during my walks, I had the opportunity to meet a lot of my neighbors and listen to their needs and their struggles that they're going through. And this, when they pay attention to the statement, to the notice, they were really against it, of course. And then they took the time to protest in writing. And I'm here basically to speak in behalf of them. A lot of them are getting not only the rate increase on the solid waste, but they're also getting increase on their rents and a lot more, their electricity, and this is just recycled. Like the lady here said, what's gonna be next, right? The water and the gas is coming down, but it says for 2 years, but they were thinking it's gonna go down in 2 years, but no, it's not gonna go down in 2 years. It's gonna keep going up. And according to the presentation, yes, there was an increase in 2019, but it was a 20% increase. The first one was in I think September, and the next one was in January, just like it's going to be done today. But this time it's a 41% increase, and that's really double the amount. So, and especially now in the economic situation that we are right now. So why can it be a 20% increase like 3 years ago? Why does it have to be a 41% increase? It's going to be 20.5% in September, which is in 2 weeks, and then the 20.5% in January. So why can it be, a 10% increase like before, or just have, consideration on what the public is going through. And they're really suffering, And like I said, I got to know my neighbors more profound because they're really speaking up. They're really sharing with me a lot that they're going through. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Michelle, and I was reading through the report that was attached to this meeting, and one of the additional pieces of information was to build back the reserve budget, or the reserve balance, I should say. And in the slides, there was a linear path to rebuild that, but after a certain point, based off of the information in the document, it said that our target goal was around 18,000, and it seems like we will surpass that in only a few fiscal years. So I guess I would like you to address what's the plan in terms of adjusting the amount of surplus that we're collecting. I know there is a 2-year plan to possibly reassess the situation, but I guess I'm just worried that we are collecting a lot up front, but then not readjusting to, I guess, meet expectations for what you're expecting.
Thank you for your comment. Next speaker, please.
Dave Shukla, 3rd District. I'm here to speak in opposition of raising the rates. The city has had ample time to prepare for new state mandates around organics collection, providing green bins to residents, as well as working with contractors who specialize in organics collection, as well as both upstream and downstream upcycling and recycling materials and diverting materials. The city knows it has oil surpluses, but it's being coy about how much those are. There's no reason why taxpayers should have to pay for city decisions, frankly, that over the past 2 years have fought the implementation of SB 1383 on more than one occasion. And given that the surf facility itself may be closed by state legislation, since city leaders have not stepped up on behalf of the environmental health of their residents, we may have other costs associated here and other ways that we're going to have to deal with them. But I don't think the current ratepayers should have to. Thank you.
Thank you.
In
We'll now
Zoom,
go to, thank you.
are we doing one more?
We have another.
This is Daryl. I protest the rate increase. I carefully read the report by the consultant, and it raised a lot of very important issues. Few people in this city, though they're receiving a rebate now for the fact that this city jury-rigged and lost in the court in regards to the violation of Proposition 218 in regards to the water rates. This is very important because how can we trust the city with the numbers that were presented here in the meeting and also presented in the document? I don't trust those numbers. Number two, the report specifically talks about Proposition 218, and clearly it states in the document that the services that are being paid for Proposition 218, charges related to property, have to be directly correlated. I cannot tell from this report when the mixing of the charges are going to occur. When are they going to be sequenced? I can't tell from the report. And so many politicians have opposed the state of California because the state passes a law, SB, whatever the number is, 1383, and does not provide any funding. This is the same thing that happens with Democrats. They pass a law, but they don't push the funding down to the cities. Did the city council, did they legislate in regards to protecting the public in regards to this law? I don't know the answer to that question. Public should want to know the answer to that. Number two, lastly, do you really believe people can afford this in this city? North Long Beach, Central Long Beach, there's a lot of poor people in this city that are barely making it. That's why you have a large homeless population. You continue to add. The Long Beach Unified School District is getting ready to have on the ballot a proposition to increase the property tax. You cannot pass this. You need to go back and seriously look at the financing of this and take into consideration the fact that probably the vast majority of people in this city cannot afford this. And we don't even know after these 2 rate increases of what's coming because you won't tell. You probably don't really know. Thank you very much. I oppose this.
Thank you. All right, that satisfies public comment here. Is this another public comment in the chamber? We asked everyone to line up. So is there anyone else in the chamber that would like to speak on this item? Now, if there anyone else, final call. Is there anyone else? Were you coming up to speak? Now would be the time. I need everyone to come forward.
It's regarding the hearing.
Regarding this hearing. Okay, is there anyone else? I see one. Is there anyone else?
Hi, my name is...
Okay, inside the chambers, you are the final speaker. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Hector Anguiano, and I'm living in North Long Beach. And before I'm living downtown Anaheim and Walnut. And I tried to speak with somebody else because they had a lot of pins.
Is this about the hearing?
Pardon me?
Is this general public comment or is this about the hearing?
No, it's general.
Okay, that's not the time for that right now. We're going to handle this hearing, and then we'll open the city council meeting. And we'll make sure if you want to talk with someone on staff that they can meet with you while you're here. Okay? Thank you so much. All right, now let's go online.
If you want to come over here, we have our signups for non-agenda public comment for the council meeting. In the Zoom, we have Whitney. Your time begins now.
Hello, my name is Whitney Amaya. I'm from West Long Beach, Ontonga Territories, and a community member and organizer with Eastside Communities for Environmental Justice. I'm also here in opposition to the proposed solid waste fee increases until the city has explored all viable options, including applying to state or federal funding for the organics collection program, additional refuse trucks, and other programmatic needs. The memo for this item cited that in addition to the organics program, the city is looking to raise fees because of increasing costs at SURF. And I think it's disgusting and wrong that we have to pay more to burn trash at an incinerator that is polluting the air that community members and myself are breathing and harming our health. I understand that the city needs funding for the organics collection program, and I appreciate the hard work that staff has been putting in to make that program a reality. But some of the associated programmatic costs seem to be one-time fees, and it doesn't make sense that we will have to continue to pay beyond those initial costs, especially when those fees can be covered by state funds. And when the proposed programmatic activities shared during the presentation doesn't even include organics collection for residential accounts. The city has already received $660,000 for the implementation of an organics program from the state. So I ask that the city continue to apply to state and federal grant programs first and explore other potential opportunities instead of passing on those costs to residents. The state has included an additional $180 million in the budget to assist local governments. So look into that, because the reality is we're all dealing with price increases on everything else in our lives, and many are already struggling to pay rent, to pay bills, and to put food on the table. Furthermore, I wanted to take this opportunity to say that we could be doing more as a city to prevent waste generation and avoid having to collect so much trash in the first place. The city could look into banning disposables and replacing them with affordable, refillable, and reusable alternatives, and in order to ensure access to low-income communities. And if you need an example of what does that mean, go to Winco, go to the bulk section, go to Ethically, go to Bring Your Own Long Beach. There are so many examples of businesses here that are building that pathway for a zero waste future. Also, we need universal recycling and composting. There are so many existing apartments and multifamily buildings that don't have access to recycling. So all of that is being burned at SURF, which is not only bad for our health and for the environment, but it's also bad for the city's pockets since it's one of the most expensive disposal options. Additionally, the city should purchase refuse trucks that are zero emissions. We don't need any more refuse trucks that are fueled by fossil fuels. Zero emission refuse trucks can save money on gas and also maintenance costs while reducing greenhouse gas emissions and pollutants that are harming our health. I believe there's also state funding for that. And then lastly, we really need to look into replacing SURF with a facility or a space that doesn't harm our community and more accurately reflects our needs. Instead of being a space that burns trash, SURF could be a place where it has composting, not anaerobic digestion, but composting on site, recycling on site.
Thank you. Next speaker is Kimberly Amaya. Your time begins now.
Hi everyone, I'm Kimberly Amaya from West Long Beach, and I oppose the proposed solid waste fee increase. Since COVID, the rate of disposable single-use items has increased, and I think the city can be doing more to prevent waste generation. An example being by banning disposables and replacing them with affordable refill and reuse alternatives. Also, not to mention, a lot of apartments don't have access to recycling. I know my sister has to come over to my house in order to actually recycle her items. So most residents who live in apartments are forced to throw it away, which means it all goes to SURF, which honestly wastes our city money and impacts my health and surrounding communities. Instead of the fee increase, I want to encourage the city to apply to existing state and federal grant programs first. Like everyone has mentioned, we're already struggling with the increase of a lot of other things, and this added fee increase is it just makes it really hard to go through our day-by-day fees. Thank you.
Our last speaker is Hilda. Your time begins now.
Sí, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Hilda Dueñas y
One,
estoy
one
aquí
second, please.
apoyando a,
1 second while we get interpretation.
estoy apoyando a todos mis compañeros que en contra de
Señora,
este
por favor,
aumento.
¿nos puede dar un momento
Porque, como han
mientras
dicho
que
muchos,
agarramos a alguien? Señora.
Apenas y ganamos para sobrevivir, y con tantos aumentos, pues es verdad que muchos ya no pueden pagar sus rentas ni todo lo que está subiendo. Nos están subiendo todo, y esto nos lleva a muchas familias a no tener vivienda, a estar viviendo en las calles o en carros, o demasiadas familias están sobrepobladas porque están viviendo muchas familias con otras familias, y es demasiado estresante todo esto. Y les pido por favor que tomen en consideración todo lo que estamos hablando, y todos mis compañeros, y apoyo a la mayoría en esta causa, y les pido de favor que consideren esto. Es todo. Gracias.
May the interpreter ask for a repetition of the first half? Señora, disculpe, ¿podría repetir la primera mitad de su discurso para que lo podamos interpretar? Dígame
Sí,
su
gracias.
nombre.
Gracias. Pues mi nombre es Hilda Dueñas y estoy apoyando a todos mis compañeros vecinos de aquí de Long Beach, de North, West, Este, y estoy en contra del aumento.
I am against the increase on the rate. I am supporting all my neighbors here in Long Beach. My name is Hilda, and we already have issues with housing. On top of that, we have many vehicles that we have to park on the same lot. We have a lot of stress regarding housing and already space in our locations. So we ask you, please consider, and I support all the people that is against this increase on the rates. I support the majority. Thank you very much.
Public comment.
Thank you all for your public testimony. We'll now close public comment on the hearing. I'm going to go to the clerk to announce the protest results. Are the protest results ready?
We've received a total of 282 protests which have not been certified. Assuming that all of these protests are certified, this number does not represent a majority of the ratepayers as required by state law. Therefore, the new rates, subject to approval by the City Council, will take effect on September 1st, 2022 and January 1, 2023.
Thank you for that report out. We'll now entertain a motion. I see Councilwoman Mungo is queued. Councilwoman, is that a motion?
I just had a question, actually.
Okay, let's get a motion teed up, and then we'll make sure we come to you first on comments. We need a motion in a second on the rate hearing. We need someone to make some motion here.
For purposes of discussion, opening discussion, I'll make the motion.
Okay, Councilwoman Price motioned, and I'll acknowledge that as a second. If you want to hit the second button. Thank you. Councilwoman Price, did you want to speak to the motion?
Well, I motioned for purposes of discussion as well. I have some concerns about it, and just wanted to talk with the city staff a little bit more about it. So where does this put us? I know you showed some slides. Where does this put us in comparison to other cities in the region?
Council member, can we get the presentation back up? So this would be the single family home rates that you see here. And again, I want to remind everyone that this does not include the cost of collection and processing of organics yet for single family homes, while it does include it for commercial. So you could see at $40.87, that would be the cost of the collection of your trash, your recycling, and also the administrative back-end cost of preparing the SB 1383 organics collection implementation, but not the actual operational cost. Compared to, for example, the city of Pasadena next to us at just about the same rate, that rate only includes their trash collection as they develop fees associated with the collection of recycling and organics. Compared to the ones on the end, where they have full-blown implementation and collection and all the other aspects of SB 1383 implemented. I would like to point out, for example, Torrance I believe is going to go forward with their rate adjustment next year. I happen to be speaking to Huntington Beach today. They're preparing to look at what their rate adjustment's going to be. So all the cities in the region are having to address this issue. And when the state, a couple of years ago, the state sent a letter out to cities, and the advice was that to fund this program is to pass the cost on to the ratepayers.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing the rest of the conversation from my colleagues.
Thank you, Councilmember Uranga.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. In the presentation, you also made comments about the lack of recruitment of drivers, also the lack of compensation or the need for greater compensation for drivers and for refuse workers as a whole in general. How much of this increase would go towards that in regards to, we're asking the residents to pay a little bit more for the service, but I think that they also expect more for that service. So how are you going to, budget for getting more truck drivers, more trucks? What is the need at this point to have this increased proposal?
Thank you for that question. As we showed on another slide, let me find it. Maybe it's. So as you can see here, all accounts are contributing to an anticipated increase in our recycling contract, as well as adding 8 positions to ensure compliance with the new regulations from the state. Then commercial accounts are also contributing, commercial accounts only are also contributing to the hiring of 8 operators and a supervisor, and some additional operating costs that go along with that, fuel, etc., and disposal for the implementation of organics collection at commercial accounts.
I also understand that we have some contracts with other agencies, Waste Management, EDCO, Athens. How much of those of our revenue goes towards paying for contractors?
0. In fact, the contractors pay us. So we have commercial. We have about 9 franchised haulers. I could be off by 1 or 2. Currently operating in Long Beach. They pay a monthly fee to the refuse fund, which goes to support the ratepayers. So actually, they're providing the ratepayers support. We're not providing them support. In addition, they pay a franchise fee that goes to the general fund to support general fund programs. So both the general fund and the refuse and recycling fund benefit from their operations.
Would there be an opportunity at this point, having said that, to maybe increase the franchise fees for these agencies?
That could be done through the budget process. It is my belief that our fees are somewhere towards the higher end that's charged throughout California, but that it would be at the will of the council.
Would there be an opportunity to engage other agencies that maybe we are not contracted with?
Adding the number of agencies will not increase the revenue. It's because there's a fixed number of accounts that these businesses qualify to service. So whether it's 10 businesses or 1,000 businesses, there's still the same fixed number of accounts. So you would not increase the revenue that we would get. That said, once we are going to be moving forward to extend the existing agreements for a little while longer, and that will give us time to develop RFPs to allow for other businesses to propose commercial collection in Long Beach.
Thank you. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Councilmember Mungo.
Thank you. Couple of quick questions. First of all, Deco, great work. It's really impressive when you look at the chart on page 9 that we're so far at the lower end of comparable cities. Do all of these cities also operate on a refuse fund? Is that a requirement of the state?
Yes and no. Some of the cities provide general fund support to their refuse fund. We try and identify most cities that are operating only as an enterprise fund like Long Beach so that we get as close to apples to apples as we can. But I do believe that some of these cities do provide some general fund support, but I couldn't tell you to what extent.
I think that that's an important part of the discussion for future slides that we share. I think it's important to know which cities are doing refuse funds, because I think it's important to know who's truly comparable. When we look at slide 9, I think it's great to see that we're at the lower end, and even after the rate increase, we'll continue to be at the lower end. What are the things you think provide us a cost savings compared to our comparable cities, and why we're so much lower, and how we've been able to maintain that?
Contrary to what some comments that were made today, I think that the fact that we have a facility like SURF has been very helpful to us. The processing of material at SURF does not create air pollutants. Everything's filtered before any emissions happen. But I think we run a pretty efficient shop. We have for a long time. We do it in-house, so we can manage our own crews and we can manage our own expectations rather than through a contractor. And there's benefits to both ways. But there's also challenges to both ways. But I think that has contributed to the success of the efficiencies in Long Beach.
Thank you for mentioning SURF. There are a lot of misconceptions about SURF, and I think that it's important for people to note that SURF actually is a more environmentally friendly way to dispose of trash. You look at some of the landfills, and the costs of trucking our trash to those landfills are actually most impactful against our most disadvantaged communities. And so that added cost and trucking along the 710 freeway would not be a benefit to our residents. And SURF is actually a more environmentally friendly option that has been helpful. But it is my understanding that it's still on track to be closed by the state regulations. Is that true?
The state regulations don't specifically close SURF, but I believe the way the legislation is written will make utilizing SURF less desirable to other communities.
But it would still be available to us?
It will likely not be financially viable if we were their only customer. And that's being studied currently. Yeah, that's
regulating us out of using the most environmentally friendly option available to Long Beach residents, and that is really a shame. Also on your chart related to the cost per bin, one of the things that I'm not clear on is whether or not individuals who have an additional bin are a benefit or a detractor from the city. The new trucks have a lot of technology. Does it demonstrate how many bins you're picking up from each location? So an example might be a resident has 2 bins, but 3 times a month they only put out 1 bin, and the 4th time they put out 2. Or are the arms on the trucks able to weigh how much is being included in these 96-gallon bins and kind of help us understand where we need to help people reduce, instead of just trying to do a everyone needs to reduce type of strategy. I know when I drive around the community on trash day, I see some trash cans that are overflowing every week, the same houses, and a lot of houses. I know I've taken out my neighbor's trash several times for her. As an elderly lady, she barely has one small bag a week. And so how do we target really those that are accumulating and throwing out the most things, and help them learn strategies to reduce their impact on refuse?
So our rate structure in Long Beach is built upon a volumetric rate structure, which means we bill by the volume of capacity you have at your particular location. So that's why a 3-yard bin costs more than a 2-yard bin. That's why a 96-gallon cart at a home costs more than a 64-gallon cart at a home, with the theory being that if you generate less waste, you pay less. As part of this study, and I wish I could tell you the exact number, but I can't. Part of what was taken into consideration was an assumption that a certain number of single-family homes will reduce from a 96-gallon cart to a 64-gallon cart. So, meaning that we won't have, those people won't be paying $36 a month into the system. They'll be paying whatever the other number was that we showed earlier. Offhand, let me see.
And what's our process of informing people about that? I know that's something that I can include in my newsletter, but if I talk about my neighbor, Miss Ho, she had kids and had a big trash can, and now they've moved away and they don't live at home anymore. And her husband has passed away, and she's never traded down her cart. Does that make sense?
Yes. We have
She
a
still has a
customer.
96.
Yeah, we have a customer service center at 570-2876 that our customer service reps are trained to inform people of that. You can also find that information on our website, I believe, and we just do general, when we table events and that type of thing, we do general information for people. People generally get very excited and immediately want to move to a smaller truck or a smaller cart, and then we start having overflow issues. So we do monitor use before we just blanketly approve, and make sure that actually, and it happens in our commercial properties more, where I don't need 3 times a week collection. I only need twice a week collection. And then you go twice a week and it's overflowing every time.
Councilwoman
Is there a
Ronquillo?
way we could include that with the bills so that people who are now being told about this potential rate increase could call a number to have their bin traded out for the smaller cart?
Sure, we could do something. We could definitely do some sort of education campaign, either with the bill or in addition to that.
And I think it'd be really responsible for us to do something with Southern California realtors, because then, say Ms. Ho decides to move into a smaller place, the person who sells her home should know how to help their new occupant, the new home buyer, get a bigger bin if they have 5 kids. That's a great example. On our street, we had Ada Dubček, who passed away, and she had lived alone for 15 years. The new family that moved in has, 4 or 5 kids. They just moved in this week, and there's kids everywhere. So they're going to have a lot more trash and diapers and all those things. So they're going to probably need to trade up. And so just making sure that that information's in the bill and accessible to neighbors, and then potentially to realtors who are helping people trade out properties, and maybe the apartment association who's also helping people find new places, that they could figure out how to do that. That would be great. I think you're doing a great job. It is always very frustrating to increase rates, especially when they haven't been increased in years. I think that this is something I've said before. I would rather, as a bill payer, have a small 5-cent raise every year than you hit me with a 25-cent raise every 3 years, because I'm not building that into my budget in the same way. And so while I hesitantly will support this item today, I would like us to be more cognizant of smaller, gradual changes over time. I recognize that there's a lot of state legislation that has challenged you and put you in this position, and it's taken some time to be diligent and make sure that we're not over increasing. And I appreciate that, because I don't want to pay higher rates for anything. And I also recognize that the price of gasoline is higher, and the price of all of these other things, and labor is higher. And so we don't want the program to be at a deficit, and we don't want the program to be in a place where trash isn't getting collected. I remember a mentor of mine once said that people shouldn't need to know who to call in local government, because every day their trash is supposed to be picked up, and the parks are supposed to be clean, and the streets are supposed to be paved. And that is a sign of good government. And I think that trash being picked up is one of those key weekly ones that is just so important, not only to modern convenience, but to public health. when trash bins are overflowing in the street, and I've had the fortune to live in another country, that is a big problem, and it causes all sorts of other issues in our more dense communities. And so I want our trash and refuse division to be efficient, effective, and appropriately funded, but not overfunded. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Austin.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to go back to the slide where you outlined the finances and current reserves. And if you could just walk us through why we are here today again. That one.
Is this the one you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So currently we have reserves of about between 8 and 9 million. I would estimate around $9 million. But as you can see, if we don't do something with our rates, probably about 3 months into next fiscal year, we will be down to zero. Let me back up a slide here. You can see that we've had operating deficits for many of the last 10, 11 years. This year, we're looking at an operating deficit at, and again, that's an estimate there on the last column, but we're looking at an operating deficit of nearly $3 million.
Okay, can you just going back? When was SB 1383 passed, and when did we know that we had this kind of mandate from the state?
Around 2016.
Okay, so we've avoided. I'm sorry.
Excuse me, one moment. So the legislation was put out in 2016, but it went into effect in 2022. And the administrative rules were not finalized. I've got my smarter people over here guiding me. The administrative rules were not finalized till 2019, so it's been a process.
Okay, and is this also consistent with the council's kind of direction for zero waste?
Absolutely.
So we've already adopted similar values aimed at reducing greenhouse gases here in the city, our footprint, and being more responsible with our waste.
Absolutely.
And I will say this is a state mandate, and I would love to see more of a phase in or lead time to allow us to implement in a manner that is not so impactful and doesn't provide such a sticker shock to our ratepayers, our constituents here in the city. That part of this is a little disturbing because of the timelines. But it seems to me like the city, for lack of better terms, our hands are really tied here. If we don't move these rates, can you just tell us what will be the impacts?
Well, if we don't put in these rates and we don't comply with the legislation, then we're subject to fines and we're subject to enforcement. We are already under an obligation. We've already been notified by the state that we need to make progress in our compliance with this Senate bill. We've provided them with a notice of intent to comply with a plan and a timeline, which is honestly probably far more aggressive than we can accomplish, but we're doing our best to get there. And again, these are not optional. And with regard to phasing in costs, we really can't charge the residents for organics collection too far ahead of time without providing the collection. So it's going to be, while we can build some stuff up like we are now with the administrative costs and things that we intend to bring in early on, when the collection starts is really when we're going to see the biggest hit, because we can't charge you for something we're not giving you before that.
Okay, so I know that Long Beach is not alone here. I'm sit on some statewide boards and with the League of Cities, and this is one of those issues that has been discussed for the last few years in terms of the implementation. I know there was some ask in the state budget this year to request funding to kind of bridge this and help local governments implement that. Did we pass anything in the budget? And
We received, as one of the public speakers commented, we did receive $600 some odd thousand from the state, and to put that in perspective, that's less than 2 trucks, but it helps. Every little bit helps, and we take that into consideration. We are constantly monitoring to see what other funds are available. Our staff belongs to a number of different organizations that communicate with each other when opportunities come up. But to my knowledge, at this point, there's no state funding source for ongoing costs of collection, processing, and disposal of organics or any other waste.
Okay, and my final question was related to the comment related to the, I guess, potential repurposing or readaptation of SURF to deal with organics. Where are we at with that right now? Have we made any sort of progress?
Yeah, the Department of Energy Resources has secured a firm to help develop an RFP that hopefully will be issued soon. I really couldn't give you a timeline on that, but that will make a request for people to propose certain options for organics processing. There are a lot of different ways to do this, some seemingly simple and others that are much more effective than things that we see going on in parts of the industry.
All right, thank you. And I asked that question. I know people are sensitive about that subject, but I want to make sure that we are exploring and have all of the options on the table to provide to our residents, our ratepayers, to make sure that we're being thoughtful and responsible with their dollars. That is my comments. I will be begrudgingly supporting this item. I'm a resident, and I know that this is going to impact a lot of people. But at the end of the day, we have to look toward our future, and we do have a mandate from the state to do this. I don't see another option, unfortunately.
Thank you for your comments, and I know that we've gone a little over the 5 minutes, but it's a really important issue, so that's important. Councilmember Supernaw.
Thank you. With that slide already up there, I just have a question, kind of a follow-up to what Al Austin's topic was. So when we go into a deficit situation, what do we do? What funding mechanism do we use to fill that gap? And that may not be a question for the general manager of Public Works, but take a shot at it.
Hopefully, council member, I'll be able to explain it. As you can see, our goal is to be at that blue line. That's 4 months of operating surplus. Okay, so that if we do, I don't know if you recall a few years back, we transitioned our utility billing system to a new customer care and billing system. And at the same time, the Department of Water and Power in LA was doing that. And in their implementation, there was a problem, and they couldn't bill for a couple of months. So if we don't have that operating reserve, then, we can't pay staff, we can't pay for fuel, we can't pay for disposal. So we have had that operating surplus, a level of operating surplus that has allowed us to cover the deficit within our own enterprise fund for the last couple of years and for all those years that you see. But we are now, as we show in this chart, we're just not able to do that anymore. And part of what impacted that is the unexpected rates of inflation, of course.
Right, understood. Thank you for that detailed explanation. And then you had mentioned that you have an anticipated increase in our recycling contract. I would venture to say that's a given. What is the sunset date of that contract?
I believe there's 2 to 3 years left on that contract.
Okay, so we're not going to feel this second hit right away.
If you could define what you mean by second hit.
Well, I mean that rate. They're saying like, okay, so we have this increase followed by another increase. There's a little bit of a cushion area between those.
Yeah, we've built in a dollar amount that we anticipate will cover the expected cost increases. We have not negotiated with the contractor or anything like that. The contractor has advised us of their concerns, and we would validate the concerns prior to doing any actual action.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilwoman Price.
Thank you. So back to Councilman Austin's questions or his comments regarding a possible tiered approach. Has that been considered?
Well, I believe in this case we're taking a two-tier approach, right? We're doing one raise in September and another raise in January. I wanted to just kind of identify with the collection portion of a rate increase. I don't know that we could do that because I'd have to check legally. Is it okay for us to begin charging people for organics collection prior to actually providing that service to smooth that transition up? And if we cannot, then it's going to be a drastic increase at one point.
Yeah, so I guess the question I had, is it possible to have more than two tiers, like spread out over a year? I mean, to me, it seems like this is a very difficult time to implement. Even if it's 2-time increase, it's a dramatic increase. So has that been considered? Is that a possibility?
We could certainly consider that moving forward, but the condition we're in now, it would not be an option that I would recommend for this current increase.
And that's because we have a dire need now.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's concerning to me because I understand that we have unfunded mandates, but I also think that there should be some options available to us. That's not, we need to pull the trigger immediately. It has to happen this month or next month. That doesn't give a lot of notice, in my opinion. But I understand the situation that we're in. In regards to the enterprise fund, going to Councilman Supernaw's question, is there, since it is an enterprise fund, can the general fund ever augment the enterprise fund when it finds itself in a deficit?
That's really a finance question. I would say that yes, that could if the council were so to direct staff to do that. But I've got someone smarter than me here to answer that question.
Our finance director, Kevin Reifer, can respond to that question.
The answer is yes. The general fund City Council has by far the greatest discretion with the general fund, and the general fund can always supplement any enterprise fund, either with a permanent transfer that's a forever subsidy or with a short-term loan.
Okay, thank you. And going back to the item, so at what point were we hit a crisis mode in terms of the enterprise funds balance?
In early fiscal year 2023. We can, if you look at that line graph that was up there.
Yes.
That's where it shows it happening.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilwoman Mungo.
Thank you. We've done a lot of talk about organics, and I know there have been prior presentations by your team, but would you give a short statement of how you plan to operationalize that organic collection by January?
I don't, but not for residential, only for commercial. Again, the proposed commercial rates do include the cost of collection for commercial accounts, organics at commercial accounts.
So our vendors are doing that?
Pardon me?
Our vendors will be doing that? The vendors that
No,
pick up the commercial accounts?
These are for city-serviced commercial accounts. So each of the franchise haulers have their own rates, and they compete with each other for those accounts that qualify to go to a private company for service. And that competition helps maintain their rates because any of those businesses could opt to go with city collection if they so choose.
Right. So my initial question was, how do you plan to operationalize collection of organics by January? For the commercial accounts, when do you anticipate that you'll start collecting organics?
Hopefully first quarter of the next calendar year. We have already ordered vehicles.
January, February, March.
Yeah, we ordered we got approval from the city council to order the vehicles back in March or April of this year. and they've been ordered. So we are in the process of hiring. As we mentioned in the presentation, we are having some challenges hiring, but we've just this fiscal year, we've already received 250 applications for jobs, but so far we've only been able to onboard about 16.
And okay. And so I guess the last and final question I would have is, if a council member didn't feel comfortable, well, let me go back one step. The refuse workers, they are IAM?
The refuse unit is represented by SEIU.
Oh, SEIU. And today we heard IAM at the table. SEIU is different, but in your rate planning, do you also plan in any particular support for the council to provide raises when contracts are expiring?
Yes.
Okay, just checking. Because it's always a balance as a council member, right? You want to have a really strong workforce, and it's hard to hire. And if you don't pay people what the going market rate is, then you don't have any people to do the work. And as I mentioned in my first go around, having people to collect trash is almost the most important component of public health in our community, because if you don't have someone collecting that trash, then we have lots of challenges that have been in our society in decades of the past, centuries of the past. So I don't want to vote against our workers, and I don't want to vote against our department. And I want to appreciate that you're doing as much as you can to keep rates as affordable as possible. It is with heartburn, though, because increasing rates for anyone right now is a very difficult thing to do. We really need to be cognizant of each and every penny. And I want to thank you for being so diligent in really looking at every single possibility of staggering and delaying any increased rates. It is great to hear that we've been kind of subventing that cost for a while. But I also would like to see us invest in collection of those who now can't afford to pay back the debt that they have to refuse services. So that is not then burdened on the majority of rate holders across the spectrum. So thank you for everything that you're doing. And this is a really difficult vote today. I want to make sure that trash is picked up and that we are efficient and effective. But I am not supportive of what the state is doing to local communities and our cities. A one-size-fits-all approach is just not acceptable for us at this level. Thank you.
Council member, I would like to also point out that funds were made available for other utilities from the federal and or states to cover this bad debt. They were not made available for refuse collection.
And that is just not acceptable either. I mean, the federal government is here to help everyone. And I don't think that the ratepayers understand that either, when they've been provided respite from electric, water, gas, rent, but no one tells them they're not getting respite from refuse. Those are going to go outstanding, and those are a long-term challenge that we're going to have. And we want to make sure that those who need the support can get it from the places that it is available. And it's unfortunate that the federal government did not provide that. Is it possible to add to our motion tonight to write some legislative support letters to provide additional funding to localities to support the dismissing of that debt by grant funds from the federal or state government? That would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. So that okay, we have Councilwoman Price.
So I've made the motion. I'm happy I'm happy to withdraw it if my seconder doesn't agree with this, but I would like to modify my motion to request that the second increase be phased in over a longer period than a one-time hit. Is that something that staff can do?
Let me respond by just saying.
I was just asking our attorneys here.
Yeah.
Sorry, Linda.
I just wanted to comment that is certainly within the council's purview to delay the implementation or to phase it, but just be aware that there will be budget implications for that delay based upon the slide, because it's imminent. He mentioned that those effects would go into place in the near term of FY23, which starts in October. So just be aware that it means that likely it'll just add to the city's structural deficit. So just be aware of that. But there's nothing that precludes you from providing that direction to staff.
I would like to also advise you that the longer you delay the implementation of the rate, the higher the rate's going to have to be at the end. Because if, for example, the rate increase doesn't get effective January 1st, then that's a 1 month of rate revenue we didn't receive that we're going to have to make up for on the back end as you phase this in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the reasons we don't extend it too long, but it is an option.
Understood.
Councilmember Yarga, is that your second?
From what I understand, we're looking at October 1 rate increase and then a January 1 rate increase.
September 1 and January 1.
Okay, so we're talking about a couple of weeks. Okay, so the phase in would be for after January. Is that, yeah? So if we implement September 1, that's fine. Got to do it. But the second phase in, can we do it like later? And how much of an impact would that do? Say in March or April?
We would have to go back and evaluate the numbers and make that determination. I couldn't tell you offhand, but I can tell you, like I said earlier, every month we delay means the need to make up the dollar gets bigger and bigger. So if it's $40 with an implementation at January 1st, it might be $41 or $42 or $43 if we implement March or April. So I don't know what that number is. We'd have to figure that out.
Okay, so, but it would have to come back to us for approval, correct?
We cannot adjust the rates without your approval.
Okay, I think Councilmember Austin has something else.
Councilman Austin.
Thank you. 2 questions. Just to be clear, does the council, the motion before us tonight, request us to do a phase-in rate increase in September and January, correct?
Correct.
Could the motion be to do the phase-in and accept the September rate increase and then have this other increase come before the council in January for further direction? I guess it could. That would be my friendly.
I would accept that friendly. I mean, what I would ask staff to do is come back with a proposal for a phased in. So instead of a one-time hit in January, it would be, it would go up incrementally for that fiscal year.
And then, so thank you for the accepting the friendly. And then the second piece was looking at the reserves that we see today, right? Is that the normal operating reserve for the fund? Is it just a 3-month reserve that you will maintain? Or will this rate increase expand that reserve?
Right now, our operating reserve is very small, but our goal is to get it to a 4-month operating reserve. And so with these rate increases that we're proposing, we anticipate getting there in about 3 years.
So you have a 3-month reserve today?
We do not have a 3-month reserve today.
Is it a 2-month reserve?
We have just over a 1-month reserve.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I would just also ask staff to look at the new what is it? The Inflation Reduction Act. I understand that there are a lot of climate goals in there, and if there are any grants available through that act, that we look to supplement the implementation of this SB 1383 as well.
Yes, we will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think I understand the motion that's here. Just have a few comments and some questions. So first, I love that we have a public refuse department that does commercial waste hauling, because it's a public option. It helps prevent the race to the bottom, because sometimes the private haulers, they compete for rates, and that means they're cutting corners and the quality is not great, particularly when we have a lot of multifamily housing in your community. So the fact that we have it is good, and I think we have to just acknowledge that quality public service does cost money. And it's great to see that we have the commercial hauling factored in. and then that ongoing cost will be passed on to the customers on the commercial side. I do think that the conversation about phasing in makes some sense. I think it makes more sense when we have addressed the deficit issue that's in front of us, because I'm a bit uncomfortable with 1 month of operating revenue. And if we get into a situation where we can't provide services, or we run out of resources, we need to make sure that we prevent that from happening. I also acknowledge that the driver shortage is certainly real, and we need to make sure that that's factored into this rate, because it's affecting our supply chain nationally. And the last thing we want is not to be able to provide services because we don't have the staff or because our operations are impacted by the budget. So the responsible thing is to make sure that our fees are in alignment with the cost. I would also say that we do have, we have quality services, but we have an efficient department, our waste department. The waste is efficient, kind of an oxymoron there. But I think it's important that we do run an efficient department. You can see, based on the other comparable sized departments, we don't charge as much. And so moving forward with a rate increase, a modest rate increase to be able to continue providing services and make sure that we have a healthy department is important. And I just want to thank you for your presentation. Now, on the motion that's here, my question for you is, if we move forward with the first rate increase, will that provide what you need to ensure that we have some cushion for, say, a 3-month phase in?
I hope. That wasn't taken into consideration in the preparation for this proposal. So we'd have to look at it. The worst possible scenario, we would need to borrow from the general fund, as our director of financial management said. But I would say I hope we would do our best to make that work.
It has to be very uncomfortable. What if we were to approve? Is it possible, Madam City Attorney, to approve the first one tonight, and then you come back with an option on the phase-in option on the second increase?
Vice Mayor, I'm understanding from our city attorney that the motion on the table that we could accept the September rate increase. Okay. Then your direction to staff would be to look at a phased-in approach, and we would bring something back to you in January. We wouldn't need to continue the hearing. We would just renotice it and set a new public hearing for January.
And a place to pay for it in a way that does not impact the general fund. Yes, we would
identify funding options as well as how it would be paid for. That's correct.
And we need to make sure it's not on the general fund. It's within refuse.
That would certainly be our objective.
Reserves or some other way.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. So I think I can support the motion on the floor. We have concluded council comment. I think now is time to go ahead and do our roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Zendejas?
Aye.
Councilwoman Allen?
Aye.
Councilwoman Price?
Aye.
Councilman Supernaw?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mungo?
Aye.
Councilwoman Sorrow?
Aye.
Councilmember Uranga?
Aye.
Councilman Austin?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Richardson?
Aye.
Motion is carried 9-0.
Fantastic. Thank you. So that satisfies the special hearing. That is now closed. We will now go into the city council meeting. We'll start with Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Uranga.
Please join me for a moment of silence in recognition of conditions around the world, how we need to improve them, and how we can do it.